Hello and welcome to Legal Bites. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we explain the law one bite at a time. We don't give legal advice, but we do talk about how the law works and try to look into our crystal ball to see how things might turn out. If you're enjoying this on YouTube, we'd love it if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, all the great YouTube-y stuff. And if you want to listen while out and about, we're now offering our live streams in podcast form where you can leave a rating and review. Links are in the description below, as well as to our clips channel where you can find some of the best clips taken from our live streams. Otherwise, if you want to catch me elsewhere, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so on Locals, Patreon, or by becoming a YouTube member, or by buying some really awesome Legal Bites merch. Again, all links are in the description below. And with that said, let's get into it. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How is everybody doing? Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're having a great Thursday. We are past hump day this week and we're doing well. We're doing well. I've gotten a lot of requests about Indy, my pupper dog. Because last time I talked about how we had to take her to the vet a couple times over the weekend, get her a couple IVs. We had this mystery illness. We've since gotten blood work back, and it turns out she had a couple bacteria strains, probably from drinking bad water. This dog, I swear, love her to death. She eats everything. She drinks everything. It does make it easier to give her medicine, though. So that is the good thing. But unfortunately, she also has a tendency to put herself in a position where she needs medicine. So, you know, I mean, at least it has a way of solving itself in some respect. So anyway, but overall, she's doing a lot better. So I really, really appreciate all the good news from or all the good wishes from people on that. But let's say hello to everybody in the chat. Let's see here. We've got Sean Johnson from Travelers Rest, South Carolina. Good morning. We've got Along the Narrow Way, Lithuanian flag, blue heart, here to learn and support. Thank you, Mr. Bites, for your service. I will pass that along to him. I know he will appreciate that. Mona Larson. I just heard Tony Ortega say Paul Haggis is going on trial for the same. Haven't heard a word in the media about it. There has been some limited reporting. I didn't know really anything about this until I caught it, just a little bit. So I haven't added it to the overall docket of cases that I'm talking about, but if there's enough interest, I may add to it. I know that I think he's an ex-Scientologist. So there's a question of like, this is Scientology's conspiracy against him, something along those lines. I don't know if that's true or if that's false. I haven't really looked into it much, but if there's enough interest, I just might add to it. Who's your what now? Says, good morning from Nova Scotia. I hope everyone's having a great day thus far. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Along the Narrow Way. Happy Thursday from my treadmill in PA. Get it. Get on that treadmill. That's awesome. Good for you. Amy Greenberg, good morning from Rhode Island. Good morning. Aaron Pixton, good morning from Boise, Idaho. Good morning. Genergy, hello, Alita. And good morning, everyone from Sicklerville, New Jersey. Love it. Love to see it. Carrie Ann, morning from Ontario. And I'm sure there are more people that have said good morning from all kinds of places around the world. Let's see. Oh, we've got Alberta, Canada has 01. Good morning to you. Pause Tech TV. Good morning, Alita from Ontario, Canada as well. We've got Michael Fisher from Omaha. Morning. Apple Pie. Good morning from Israel. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. And let's see. We've got Charles LePage. Same. This is why I've bought one of those litter robots, and I'm probably going to post about it because it should be coming in very soon. So hopefully that'll help our overall situation, because I strategizing around this whole strange taste has been a thing. It's been a whole thing that we've been trying to figure out. But anyway, Against the Tide. Hi from Utah. Hello. And we've got Janky Yannicka Vandelar. I'm so sorry. I feel like I totally butchered that. Morning from Nederland. Morning. Aaron H. Good morning from Orlando. And I also see a member chat showing up in the regular chat. Doesn't show up in StreamYard, of course, but Big Spring, Texas from Kiska Hamlin. Awesome. I love it. Love to see it. I wish I could highlight it on the screen, but it doesn't even show up as a regular chat when it does it through the member chat. Cherry Cupcake, good morning from London. Good morning. Fiona Roberts in Scotland calling. I love it. Stefan Grebe, hello from Switzerland. Hello. We've got Manitoba, KK Weston. Oh, it's already snowy in Manitoba? Holy cow. Skeleton Click, good morning or good afternoon from Germany. Guten Tag. And also Secret Squirrel, I see your chat, your member chat in the regular chat. If you refresh, you should be able to see super chats because I forgot to reinstate those after earlier because I had temporarily taken those down. But now that we are back to regular programming, we can continue on with normal super chats and super stickers. So I think if you refresh, you should be able to see super chats, and you should be able to do those if you so please. No one is under any obligation to do anything. It's always more than appreciated, but regular chats are great too. I love seeing folks in the chat here, especially so much wonderful support. So I see everybody's got a great vibe today. I was going to say this morning or afternoon or evening, from everywhere that we're seeing, and I love it. I love it. I love it. So we've got a lot to talk about because there is so much happening right now. And it's like, there's always a lot of law happening, but there's so much like DV law specifically happening. We've got trials, multiple trials. I'm not even talking about all the TV trials, right? We already mentioned the Haggis trial that I'm not even talking about, but we've got the Kevin Spacey trial. We've got the Danny Masterson trial. We've got the Harvey Weinstein trial, and Weinstein and Masterson are both criminal cases, whereas the Kevin Spacey one is a civil case. All of these are allegations from, well, in Spacey's case, it's one plaintiff, but there are other people that have kind of shown up as witnesses in the trial so far, to talk about things that Kevin Spacey has done. But so all three of these individuals have faced a series of allegations, but in Masterson and in Weinstein, both of them being in California, both of them have several charges that have been made against them, involving SA of multiple women. So it's very interesting stuff. And so all of these things, of course, the trial gods couldn't be friendly to us, right? To space these out a little bit. Who cares, right? I mean, these are real lives at stake. So we're gonna just handle the news as it comes. But the unfortunate thing is that, of course, none of these trials are being publicized. And when I say unfortunate, I say like that's obviously just in a bit of a selfish way, right? Because we want to be able to see for ourselves what's going on in the courtroom so that we can see if the headlines are actually accurate. Now, on the other hand, obviously these are all very sensitive cases, right? We've got people that are in a lot of these cases are alleged victims, right? These are people who are anonymous in their naming in these cases. So, and that's because of the sensitivity of the allegations. So we obviously want to treat these cases with that kind of sensitivity that they deserve. But I do still always wish, and it's not because of a weird sense of like, we deserve to know what's going on in these people's personal lives, and especially in these awful, circumstances. But just because we want to make sure, we want to see that the media is actually portraying these in the way that is proper. So what I'm going to do is pull from several different sources, on these different cases, and see if we can parse through these things, right? We never can tell, what is missing from these things. Maybe not never, right? Sometimes we can suppose based on what we know about trials and based on like the procedure, right? We've seen, for example, the procedure in a trial. When a witness is on, you've got direct examination, you've got cross-examination, then you've got the redirect by the friendly attorney in that case. So sometimes we can kind of like maybe fill in some of the gaps just based on what we know about trials in general. But as it happens with all of these cases, like we simply don't know what is just kind of like being omitted, like just based on what the journalists reporting on this find to be the most important pieces of each of these days. And we've seen in previous trials that sometimes, when we're watching for ourselves, we see what is most important and what is probably going to land for a jury, and we kind of call it as we see it, and we're calling balls and strikes as we go along. And then we turn and look at some headlines, look at some reporting on stuff, and we're like, how did they completely miss the most important part of the day? And they're focusing on like some weird like side show part that like no one cares about. That was like, they're calling some kind of a zinger, but like realistically, the jury is probably not focusing on because of X, Y, and Z that happened. So, anyway, we are going to do our best here with all of this. All right. So let's start with Harvey Weinstein, since that one is it's going to be probably a shorter conversation, right? Because I guess just as a little bit of a summary here, right? We've got Masterson, we've got Weinstein, and we've got Kevin Spacey. So Danny Masterson and Harvey Weinstein are both in California. Kevin Spacey is in New York. Masterson and Weinstein are both criminal cases. Kevin Spacey is a civil case brought by the plaintiff, brought by the alleged victim. Weinstein and Masterson are still basically in jury selection and in pretrial motions. So trial has begun, but it hasn't begun in its substance, right? We haven't even heard opening statements yet as of this moment, right? Like maybe today in court they will have resolved stuff, but at this point, so far the reporting that we can see coming out of the courthouse is that they are still pretty much in this preparation zone. But there's still some interesting stuff to talk about from the kind of stuff that's been coming out of the courthouse. So yeah, let's start with Weinstein, and basically what we've got is, it may sound a little strange, but we've got some toilet talk. So in Weinstein, now folks that have been following this whole Harvey Weinstein saga know that he's already been convicted in New York, right? He's already serving, I think, a 23-year sentence. I was reading this. I may have flubbed the number, but I'm sure it'll come up in the article. I know I was reading it earlier. It should come up in at least one of these. But he is already serving out a conviction. So he is in LA County Sheriff's what's the word for it? I'm totally brain farting. I'm a professional. He's in prison essentially. And so he's still got this other trial, but at the same time, he's already serving out a sentence. So, and I will say, actually, before I get into this article, that I want to make sure that when I'm talking about these cases, I mention when I feel personally that there's a little bit of a thumb on the scale for me personally. And on this one, I feel like I've seen a lot coming out from the New York trial. I know he's already got that conviction from the New York case. And I know that's going to come out in this trial because of the California rules of evidence in these kinds of cases and criminal cases. And so for me personally, I feel like he's going to get convicted again. I feel like this one is going to happen. And it probably should, because, maybe that's me being biased. I'm still going to remain open. I'm still going to call things when things are for his benefit. But I personally feel like he's probably guilty. The other two cases that we're talking about on this, I am less familiar with, to be honest. But this one is, because this is like Harvey Weinstein is like the Me Too guy, right? He's the guy that people talk about as like the allegations that came out against him were the ones that really sparked the Me Too movement. And as the dominoes fell across the world, across all kinds of industries, then we started to see cases that were, not quite as strong as the Weinstein case. And And I should mention not just Weinstein, but there was also the Larry Nassar case, right? The U.S. women's gymnastics team, all of that stuff. So it wasn't just him, but those two cases that were like the most egregious that people found. And then dominoes kind of fell across the way, and then people have all kinds of opinions as to whether different individuals that were accused of DV or SA kind of stuff, they people have different opinions as to whether or not, like, how far that gradient goes, right? Obviously, we saw that it extended all the way to Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I think overall, by and large, you'll see that people will look at that and say that went way too far. Like, that's an example of taking a case and saying we are now just listening and believing instead of listening and investigating. So in this one, we are going to listen and investigate, just like all the different cases. And I keep remembering things that I want to say. And I know that I'm talking about all these 3 different cases in the same live stream, and I don't want that to be taken as I'm viewing all of these cases in the same light, because obviously they are all different situations. These are all different defendants, all different. I mean, there's similar accusations, there's similar types of accusations, but they're different fact patterns, right? So we are going to look at each of these as we can, as fairly as possible, and treat them differently. So, okay. Fun times. I see you in the chat with a member chat that says, if he gets convicted, does it add to his time, or just he does it at the same time? I am actually not sure about that one, but I'm going to find out, because that's a good question. And I've never seen a case where somebody has been tried in 2 different jurisdictions for these kind of similar cases, like one right after another like that. At least not this closely. So let me just write that down real quick, and then I will continue on. Hold, please. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay, so let's get into this article. Finally, right? Can we actually let's move on to LB. All right, Weinstein lawyer decries almost medieval cell conditions. All right, so there's a photo of Harvey Weinstein, and this is from the Associated Press. All right. Harvey Weinstein's attorney told the judge at his SA trial Tuesday that conditions in the holding cell where he's being kept after court are unhygienic and almost medieval. Attorney Mark Worksman asked Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Lisa B. Lynch for help with the issue at the beginning of the second day of jury selection in the former movie mogul's trial on 11 counts of SA. He said Weinstein is being left alone in his wheelchair for 3 or 4 hours in an unsanitary, fetid holding cell at the courthouse before he is taken back to jail. It's almost medieval, the conditions, Worksman said. He's 70 years old. I'm worried about him surviving this ordeal without a heart attack or stroke. Weinstein and the panel of 71 jurors who were brought in to fill out an initial questionnaire on Tuesday were not yet present during Worksman's remarks. Lynch replied that she would talk to deputies from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, which runs the jails and transports inmates to court, but that her power was limited over the matter. I'm not minimizing it. I'm just not sure. There's a lot to be done, she said. Weinstein, who is allowed to change into a suit from his jail attire for trial, was wheeled into the courtroom soon after and slowly and carefully climbed into a seat at the defense table. So we've already got like a few things going on here, right? We've got, he's obviously, like I said before, he's already, serving a sentence. So he's in the LA County Sheriff's Department facilities. And so the judge is saying, look, I don't have much power over the way that they run their stuff. And that is probably fairly true. And I will say, look, even though he's been convicted, he still has a right to certain proper conditions. I have worked on the kind of cases where people who are incarcerated in the state of California are suing the state of California because they're saying, I am not being treated properly. There are cases where that has merit. There are cases where that has zero merit. I've I've seen plenty of those where you can tell that somebody just has a lot of time on their hands, and they understand that there's a way to settle these kind of like nuisance sort of cases against the state, because it's just going to cost too much money for the state to litigate. So we'll toss out a nuisance settlement. So there's perhaps a small cottage industry sometimes that can develop in these kinds of situations where very savvy people who are learning about the process, the legal process while they are incarcerated, are sort of taking advantage of that. But there are still cases where that's legitimate. And we've talked about the LA County Sheriff's Department on this channel so far. We talked about it in the context of the Vanessa Bryant case, which went all the way to trial. She got a huge verdict against the LA County Sheriff's Department. And honestly, like in researching for that, there were a lot of things that came out that were a little unsavory, right? I mean, depending on where you're coming from, you might be feeling like you already feel a certain kind of way about the police, whether you are someone who tends to, you know, uh, more inherently trust police, um, or I don't want to say like respect, because the other people just like don't respect, but like, like people who say like, I tend to respect authority. I tend to, like I have no problem with them. And then other people that are like, look, there's so much corruption in these, in the police force. There's so many problems. There's so many, like all kinds of things. And both sides of, both perspectives probably have merit, depending on the circumstances that we're talking about. But in this kind of a case, we're talking about the LA County Sheriff's Department, and we do need to make sure that even where someone who has been convicted still has, certain constitutional rights that are not being violated, by being held in sort of, if they are medieval kind of circumstances. Of course, this is the argument by his attorney. So whether they're medieval, whether they're not medieval, I don't know. This is what he's saying. And so the court, the judge here is saying, hey, I'm not sure, I'm not certain, but if there is something to be done, I'll see what I can do. I have limited scope, but let's see. And then we've got this other part where we're talking about Weinstein was allowed to change into a suit from his jail attire for trial. And this is also obviously for bias reasons, right? Because if he were required to come in an orange jumpsuit to trial, how prejudicial would that look to a jury? If we're going to convict him in this case for the charges that are in front of him, it better damn well be for the actual charges, right? Like we all should believe in that, because that means that the system is working properly, right? And that we've got people that are actually interested in justice. Because what kind of justice is there if we just kind of feel like this guy's slimy because of the other stuff that we figure that he's done, or that we know that he's done in the past, and then we kind of like use this as an excuse against him. We don't like that. So for reasons of prejudice, allowing him to come in a suit, of course, that's kind of a nothing burger, not controversial in my opinion. But him being wheeled into the courtroom soon after, his failing health is one thing that has come up quite a bit in the reporting, and I think that it will continue to play quite a role in this trial, because the allegations here are that he's this predator, right? He's this predator that has, that has this whole lineup of women that he has victimized, that he has done these horrible things to. And him showing up looking kind of feeble can potentially call some of those things into question, if they say like, look, this guy looks so weak. This guy, like what could this guy do possibly? Are these women maybe exaggerating things? Are they not exaggerating things? So that is going to play a role, and that's something that the prosecution is going to have to, address, which I'm sure that they will. So it'll be interesting to see if there's reporting on that, and to see if there is, something that we can see as to how the prosecution does kind of address that obvious thing, because we're again dealing with the passage of time. We're dealing with the passage of time, and this is one of those usually when I talk about that being an issue in these kinds of cases, the passage of time, I'm usually talking about, okay, evidence disappears, memories fade, memories get a little bendy with time too, right? Especially when we're talking about especially when we're talking about, people that have been through a lot of trauma. But here we're also talking about how the perception of the defendant can change because of his health changing. So, all right. So let's continue on with the article. Worksman then raised the issue again, suggesting Weinstein didn't have a toilet to use in the cell. Lynch replied, "He's not deprived of a toilet. There is a toilet in the cell. I'm not going to let the record reflect that he's deprived of a toilet." So she's making that very clear. Worksman said he didn't mean to suggest there was no toilet at all, but said it is unhygienic. It is virtually unusable. It is medieval. Now, I mean, he's using very strong language, and that is his job as an attorney representing his client, right? Whether or not it's actually medieval is maybe up to some factual interpretation, but he's definitely calling it into question, and that's his job, right? He's got to vigorously, vociferously represent his client. Worksman said he didn't mean to suggest there was no toilet at all, but said, "Oh, sorry. Hello, I just read that." An email seeking comment from the sheriff's department was not immediately returned. Weinstein's attorneys have brought up his failing health repeatedly, both during his New York trial, where he was sentenced to 23 years in prison for convictions of, we'll say SA, because let's face it, we want to play with the YouTube gods here. And in his pre-trial hearings in Los Angeles, he was hospitalized with chest pains and had a heart procedure immediately after he was found guilty in New York in February of 2020, and was diagnosed with COVID-19 in prison in the first weeks of the pandemic. His lawyers have said he has diabetes and is technically blind. They have asked the judge for permission to see an outside dentist because the one he sees in jail keeps pulling out his teeth. Whew. Yeah. So that's interesting. In court, he appears pale and frail, looking nothing like the bearish man who once lorded over the Oscars every year. Like I said, this is something that is going to come up in this trial, and the jury's gonna see his frailty, and the prosecution has to make it very clear that things have drastically changed since the events that occurred. Weinstein's trial, which comes 5 years after women's stories about him gave momentum in the Me Too movement, is expected to last 8 weeks. With a slow process of screening and selecting jurors from a pool of more than 200, opening statements aren't expected until October 24th. That is 11 days from now. So we'll see. We'll keep tabs on this. And this is obviously going to extend out quite a bit. But before we move on from this particular case, I'm going to go through another article because maybe it'll give us another perspective, and also okay, here we go. All right, here's another article. And so this one was from, by the way, the last one was from October 12th. This one is from today, October 13th. So now we've got an update on the toilet situation. Sheriffs cleaned up Harvey Weinstein's cell after lawyer deemed it almost medieval conditions, according to the attorney. Weinstein's SA trial began in Los Angeles on Monday. All right, there's another still of Harvey Weinstein. All right, let's get into this article here, because it looks like things developed. The LA County Sheriff's Department acted fairly quickly as soon as they were kind of called out here, which is probably appropriate if it warranted it. Harvey Weinstein appeared in court again on Wednesday in Los Angeles in his SA trial that began on Monday. On Tuesday, Weinstein's lawyer, Mark Worksman, asked Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Lisa B. Lynch for help regarding his client's holding cell. Worksman said the conditions were unhygienic and almost medieval. On Wednesday, Worksman thanked the judge for dealing with the conditions and said the sheriffs inspected and cleaned up the place where he's being housed. Sorry. All right. Wednesday was the final day the court featured a jury panel in the selection process. Court will be dark on Thursday, with lawyers returning on Friday for motions in limine or the last arguments on what evidence can be presented in court. Because right, as we are gearing up for every trial, you've got jury selection where they've got to go through and make sure that folks aren't biased. And I am absolutely not surprised at all that this case is going to go through an extensive jury selection process. They're going to go through a large pool of people because obviously it's hard to find people who have not heard of Harvey Weinstein, especially in a town like Los Angeles, right? This is when we talk about jury pools, we've talked before on this channel about the difference between a federal jury pool, the difference between a state jury pool. State jury pool is usually much more narrow. Federal jury pool, you've got a bit more of a broad selection geographically speaking, and so sometimes you can kind of spread out the spread out the likelihood of bias, but not exactly. But with that spread, you can kind of like it kind of trickles out that possibility of bias sometimes. But in this kind of a case, it's hard to come by anyone who has not heard the name Harvey Weinstein, who doesn't have a strong opinion about Weinstein. And I mean, personally, I think there's merit to that. So most likely what they're going to have to do is find people that have heard of him, find people that have heard of maybe of the allegations and who are going to be able to look at this case relatively objectively. So it's going to be a challenge for Harvey Weinstein on this case. All right. Let's continue on. Okay. Weinstein addressed the potential jurors on Wednesday after Worksman introduced him to the courtroom. "We are very pleased to introduce you to Mr. Harvey Weinstein, our client," his lawyer said, with Weinstein replying, "Hi, everyone," as he waved. Weinstein has pleaded not guilty to 11 counts of SA involving California Governor Gavin Newsom's wife, Jennifer Siebel, and 4 other women. The women will testify as Jane Doe during the trial in a Los Angeles court where jury selection began Monday. It's interesting, based off of this reporting, it's unclear to me if they mean all of them, including Jennifer Siebel and as well as the 4 other women, or if what they're indicating is Jennifer Siebel, Gavin Newsom's wife, is going to be testifying, and then the others are going to be testifying as Jane Doe's. I don't. Yeah, well, we'll see. Well, that might be made clear soon enough. I'm sure it will. Weinstein, 70, is currently serving a 23-year prison sentence following a conviction in New York. Weinstein was granted permission to take his appeal of his 2020 sex crime conviction to the New York State Court of Appeals. So yeah, he's been convicted, but he is attempting to appeal. We'll see if it works out. Weinstein's trial, which comes 5 years after women's stories about him gave momentum to the #MeToo movement, is expected to last 8 weeks. With the slow process of screening and selecting jurors from a pool of more than 200 people, opening statements are not expected until October 24th. So, all right. So we will definitely be keeping tabs on the Weinstein case just to see what's going on with that one. I anticipate that for the next 10, 11 days, that's probably going to be a little bit slower, but if there's anything that's interesting that seems like it could be informative, I will definitely be bringing it up and we'll be talking about it. Now, the other case here that is all right. Now the other case that we're going to talk about next is the Danny Masterson case. But before I do that, let me get some super chats. Satu Toivonen says, "Love to you and the pupper from Finland. Something I heard on Hoag's H&H and wanted to convey to you. Potatoes gonna potato. Or is it potatoes gonna potato? Potatoes gonna potato. Potato, potato. I don't know." Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And of course, I appreciate Hoag. Props to Hoag. He's a great guy. He's a wonderful guy. And I really value my friendship with him. So, and thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. Also, KK Weston, welcome to Bike Club. Happy to have you here. And I also saw, I saw this earlier. Fun Times gifted 5 Legal Bites memberships. Thanks so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That is so kind, so generous of you. I really appreciate seeing that. That is, I love seeing when folks spread the wealth, they spread the love, and yeah, it's great. Makes me feel great. So, um, haters gonna hate, potatoes gonna potate. Joanne K says, "Oh, I love it." Uh, I am always a fan of any kind of cheesy humor. You guys know that. Uh, I'm unabashedly in favor of that. Okay, let's get into the Danny Masterson case. All right, so we're gonna play a little bit of catch up on this one as well. Okay. Here is an article from, where's the date on this one? October 10th. So yeah, like I said, this is a little bit of catch up. And like I said, Masterson is also in jury selection process. So, we're kind of talking about the stuff that's coming out of the pretrial hearings here. And here's an article from Variety talking about Danny Masterson goes on trial for SA as Scientology looms in the background. So, of course, this one is with Weinstein, we've got the hashtag Me Too movement. Like that's kind of the looming theme on that one, is that he was kind of one of the prime figures, one of the prime focal points, you could say, of the Me Too movement. And so that's kind of the theme over there. And here we've got the topic of Scientology and what kind of a role that's going to be playing in this case. Because remember, if you haven't been following this case, maybe you have, but just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, Danny Masterson has at least two cases going on right now, right? He's got this criminal case, and then he's got a civil case that the Church of Scientology tried to take all the way up to the Supreme Court. That got knocked back down. So now they've got to go basically back to brass tacks and litigate this thing in the public courts. So he's got these two, and the civil case really is, I think, the focal point, even more than him, is probably the Church of Scientology, because it's really all about basically retaliation for these claims that these women have come forward for, saying that they were treated with or they were given the fair game treatment, right? If you're familiar with Scientology, if you're not familiar with Scientology, why didn't I do this already? I should have linked in the stream to my conversation with AA Ron, Aaron Smith Levine, right? Levin. I'm so sorry. I've got Aaron. If you're watching, I'm so sorry. Aaron Smith Levin, because he's a former member of the Church of Scientology. He's growing up in Scientology is the name of his channel. If you haven't already seen him, check it out. It's very, very interesting stuff. He talks about he basically opens up the hood as to his experiences with Scientology, and as a former insider's perspective, and someone who has since left, and has since kind of faced some of the stuff that a lot of people talk about when somebody leaves the Church of Scientology. Very interesting discussion. And so, we talked about fair game. He kind of explained what that's been all about. And so anyway, so I should have linked to that in the description. I probably, if I can remember, I'll do that after the end of this. But that civil case is basically mostly, I would say, it looks like so far, about the Church of Scientology, kind of less so about Danny Masterson himself, except for whatever role that he played in helping to, I guess, allegedly orchestrate any of those things that happened to them. They're talking about intimidation, stalking, harming family pets, all kinds of intimidation of family members. Like there's stuff that they have alleged, which obviously, when we are talking about any of these cases, we're talking about allegations, we're talking about shade, allegations are not the same thing as evidence that has to be proved, right? Regardless of how we feel about the Church of Scientology going into it. I know that there are a lot of people that feel a very certain kind of way about the Church of Scientology. But we've got to give them the fair treatment, just like anybody else, right? So in the criminal case here, this is how we've got this article right here is, the criminal case. We're still kind of talking about the Church of Scientology, right? Because it's gonna come in and to a certain extent. Is it fair for that to come in? To what extent is it maybe fair for that to come in? That's what these questions are going to basically grapple with, because there is definitely a certain kind of perception of the Church of Scientology that has been lingering for a long period of time. Whether that's warranted or unwarranted is up to the eye of the beholder. I think that probably the more popular view tends to be that the Church of Scientology, the reputation that it has, is warranted. But whether or not the general reputation that the Church of Scientology has, that those factors that led to that reputation are present in this particular case is, another question. So let's get into what this article is talking about here, about the Church of Scientology and its role in the criminal case. All right. Like I said, this is Variety. And it says Danny Masterson goes on trial for, and we're going to say SA again because we don't want to get nixed by the YouTube algorithm gods, as Scientology looms in the background. All right, and there's a photo of him in court. As a pretrial hearing in the Danny Masterson SA case last week, Judge Charlene Olmedo laid down a basic ground rule. This is not going to become a trial on Scientology, she said. And that's absolutely fair, right? Because the reputation of the church should not become what this trial is about, because the trial is about certain specific allegations. Those need to be put on with facts and evidence, because that is the way that we do these cases, right? That is the only fair way to do these cases. It's the only fair way to determine whether someone has been rightfully or wrongfully accused, whether someone has come out with these allegations, with these accusations, properly or improperly. That's how we do this, right? We're here for justice, not convictions, right? That's what the DA's office is supposed to be about, and we'll see how that plays out. Okay. But the role of the church will nevertheless be a key theme in the trial, which begins with jury selection on Tuesday. Masterson, the 46-year-old former star of That 70s Show, is facing 3 charges of forcible SA and a possible sentence of 45 years to life. It's a long time, right? So the stakes are very high for Masterson here. Masterson is a Scientologist, and all 3 of his accusers were members of the church at the same time, or at the time of the alleged incident. Excuse me, guys. Let me rewind. All right. Masterson is a Scientologist, and all 3 of his accusers were members of the church at the time of the alleged assaults. Olmedo has indicated that she will allow some testimony about Scientology and its practices, especially to the extent that it helps explain why the accusers delayed going to the police for 2 of them by more than a decade. So basically saying, look, we've got a certain factor that prevented us from coming forward, because obviously, again, like that's like I said before with the Weinstein case, time is going to be one of the themes that's going to come up in the case. With the passage of time, you've got evidence can disappear, memories can fade, especially those that are potentially traumatic memories. All kinds of things can happen with the passage of time that can make a particular case more difficult. And I fully expect the defense in this case, in all of these cases, right, to point out the passage of time between the date of the alleged incident and the date upon which the person who is making the allegations came forward, whether they made a public statement, formally, naming this person, or whether they went to the police, whether they told friends or family members, whether they talked about it to anyone, because the timing of that can become relevant. If it becomes something where suddenly it's convenient or advantageous to kind of essentially bury someone with a baseless allegation because of a particular popular social movement at the time, that's something that could be, really examined and looked into, and could be something that weighs against the person who is accusing. Not to say, of course, that everyone that made an accusation around the time that the Me Too movement was at its height did so, with lies and whatnot. We're not in that business, but it is legitimate for the defendant to say, look, what kind of risk did you have in coming forward with a particular allegation at this time? Like, people were looking for people to essentially crucify during this movement, right? Men were out, women were in. Folks can say that because to a certain extent, that is true, in my opinion. At a preliminary hearing in May 2021, all three said they feared violating the church's rules and being cut off from their faith community. If you have a legal situation, you may not handle it externally from church, testified one of the accusers, who is referenced as N. Trout in the proceedings. You'll be excommunicated. Another accuser, Jen B., testified that she worried that she would be declared a suppressive person if she went to the LAPD. Now, and if you were here for the conversation with AA Ron, the declaration of somebody as a suppressed person means that they are fair game, right? According to what I have learned through this process, right? I don't have any personal knowledge of these practices. I have never seen it. I've never witnessed it, but this is my understanding based on what I have learned through others. Is this, people have this allegation that once they leave like that, once they make an allegation like that, they become a suppressive person. Then all of a sudden they are open to stalking, open to harassment, open to all kinds of crazy, wild things happening to them. And it's all sort of like in the name of protecting the Church of Scientology. And by the way, I want to say this, and which I probably should have said at the top of the subject. When I am talking about the Church of Scientology, I've gotten some comments from folks saying you shouldn't call it the Church of Scientology because it's not really a church. It's more of a this, it's more of a that. When I am calling it the Church of Scientology, this is the legal name of the organization. Whether or not it is actually a church is not what I'm getting at here by labeling it the Church of Scientology. I'm not making any kind of judgments or conclusions one way or another about it. This is the name of the organization that is on all of the legal filings, on all of the pleading papers. And when they are listed here, they are using the legal name of this organization. So that is why I am using the name the Church of Scientology. So I as someone who has not had any personal touch points with Scientology, I have no way of knowing one way or another as to whether or not they are a church officially, or what have you. I leave that up to your interpretation based on the information that we are going through. So you are absolutely free to come to your own conclusion on that. So, okay, let's continue on. Okay. Suppressive person. My parents would have to disown me, she said. My friends, everyone I knew would disown me. I couldn't speak to them. I could be lied, cheated, stealed, harmed, or destroyed. So this, social, um, social cut offness, excommunication, basically like getting cut off by a society that for a lot of these people they probably grew up in, right? Because in my conversation with Aaron with AA Ron, he was saying that most of the people, according to him, he said most of the people that are in Scientology are people that grew up in it. So you've got people who potentially have all of their connections within the Church of Scientology. And so being cut off from that is like getting just completely excommunicated from an entire society. There are all kinds of psychological impacts that can happen from that, right? Because at the end of the day, we are social creatures. We need our tribe, we need our families, we need our people, we need social connection in order to have good mental health. There's all kinds of studies on this kind of stuff. So I'm curious as to whether or not the prosecution is going to try to introduce some expert witnesses on the subject to see, what are they, if they can actually if they can actually introduce that kind of stuff, we'll see. We'll see. I will be very curious to see that, because that would be a very interesting aspect to sort of explain from the prosecution side why these women waited so long. Whether or not that is true or not, even if you have an expert witness, obviously, is another question, right? Because in every trial, there's going to be expert witnesses. They're always hired guns. They're always like, they've been through a vetting process by that legal team, right? And so they're never going to put an expert witness that's going to be like, meh, I don't really know. Yeah, maybe. And what they're going to do is they're going to put forward a position that is most likely favorable to the side that hired them. So we saw this in the Depp v. Heard trial. We'll see it in pretty much every trial where there's any ounce of expertise that is needed, that would require an expert witness. So let's get back to the article, though. At the preliminary hearing, one of Masterson's lawyers, Sharon Applebaum, argued that the three accusers had formed a sisterhood, quote unquote, to try to take down both Masterson and Scientology. She pointed to the involvement of Leah Remini, an ex-Scientologist who explored the case against Masterson on her A&E documentary series. The defense has also argued that the women are lying about consensual encounters because they want to extract a civil judgment. The three accusers filed a lawsuit in 2019 against Masterson and the church, alleging that they were victims of fair game attacks after going to the police. After 3 years of legal wrangling over whether the case should be decided through a church-run arbitration process, the U.S. Supreme Court denied the church's appeal on that case last week, and the case will go forward in civil court. Yeah, so I talked about that. And if you want to see my video on that, I should have also linked to that in the description below. Let me make a note of this so that I can hopefully remember that later. Because otherwise, if I don't write it down, I am 100% going to forget. Okay, so, all right. Let's continue on with the article. One of the accusers, Jen B., also received a few $100,000 in a settlement for her SA allegation in 2004. Almeida has predicted that the criminal case will take less than the allotted 4 weeks and has tried to keep the focus on the three alleged SAs. One of the accusers, Chrissy Carnell Bixler, dated Masterson for about 6 years in the late 1990s and early 2000s. In November 2001, she alleges that she awoke to find Masterson on top of her. How should I say this? Doing things. You guys can read it. You guys can read it on the screen. She decided to fight back and grabbed his hair, at which point she alleges that he struck her in the face. After she was able to get him off her, he alleges that I think it's supposed to say she alleges that he spit on her and called her quote unquote white trash. So it's interesting though, because, and I've seen this in, some of the messaging coming out from Masterson's side saying that he's saying this is like the Manson argument, right? Saying there's a whole conspiracy going on against me. We've got these women that have come together and sort of concocted this story, and they're working with Leah Remini, who essentially has it in for the Church of Scientology. She's got a personal grudge against Masterson. This is all according to Danny Masterson. I don't know one way or another. I'm just sort of relaying the arguments from his team, but these are the arguments that he's making. And so I fully expect this to be the central theme coming from the defense in this case is saying this is not about justice. This is about a personal grudge. This is about, people trying to take advantage of a particular movement, and trying to take someone down. So when you have a defense like that, you are probably going to see a bit more of an aggressive stance from the defense. There are different types of strategies that both sides can take in cases like these. And it's tricky, right? Because we're talking about some very sensitive subjects, but we've already seen, well, I haven't talked about it yet, but in the Spacey trial, we're going to get into, well, I guess I did kind of talk about it because I talked about opening statements in my previous video. But, the opening statements by Spacey's defense were pretty bold, because they're basically going, with full court press saying, look, this is all a hoax. And this is somebody who has it in for this guy. And yeah, so they kind of have to go aggressively with that, because if you're going to say that, it's hard to kind of like let someone off the hook, so to speak, if that's the stance that you're taking. So, but it's tricky, because if you do that and the jury doesn't really agree, they may end up being pushed even harder towards the prosecution side, because they are going to say, look, not only is this person right, but you are basically abusing them in the process, like through this whole legal process. So, uh, anyhow, let's get back to the article. So it'll be interesting, like I said, as we continue on. Okay. Jen B alleges that she went to Masterson's house in April 2003. She testified at the preliminary hearing that he gave her an alcoholic drink and then threw her in a jacuzzi. After that, she started to feel like she would throw up. She alleges that Masterson brought her to a bathroom upstairs where she vomited. She then remembered that Masterson put her in the shower and then onto his bed where she passed out. Now, it doesn't say it explicitly. It doesn't come out and say it, but from those pieces of those breadcrumbs that are in that paragraph, it sounds like what she's basically saying is, I think he drugged me. Um, because why else would she just like have one drink, vomit, and then basically pass out? That does sound like typically what you hear when somebody has spiked a drink. But yeah, let's continue on. When I came to, he was on top of me, and he was, you guys can read it, doing things. She testified. She said she tried to push him away, but that he grabbed both of her wrists and then pulled a gun out of the nightstand. Don't effing move, he said, according to her testimony. The following year, she wrote a letter to the international justice chief within Scientology seeking permission, quote unquote, to bring a civil suit and criminal charges. She also said she feared that doing so would result in losing all my friends and family who are Scientologists. So, now we're talking about somebody who says that she tried to use the internal process within Scientology. This is another kind of situation where Scientology just kind of naturally comes up just in telling the story of what happened to this person. And I think that is, that's fair. That's fair in that kind of circumstance. Now, obviously, just because it's fair in that circumstance, that doesn't mean that the prosecution can then like run that all the way to the end zone and talk about Scientology up and down everywhere. They still have to make sure that it reasonably makes sense, because it has the test here when we're talking about Scientology is going to be inevitably, number one, is it relevant? And number two, is it more relevant than it is prejudicial? Because that's basically the test that's going to be used here. Because even if it's relevant, but it's more prejudicial than it is relevant, there's a good chance the court could leave that out. The Justice Chief, Mike Ellis, responded a week later saying she would have to decide for herself, quote unquote, whether to bring a civil suit. The letter did not address the possibility of going to the police. Regardless of your decisions in the legal arena, you do need to apply LRH technology as the ultimate solution to any problem, Ellis wrote. Now, this is referring to the process that Scientologists use for I'm totally going to butcher it, but we talked about this again when Aaron was on the channel. He explained it so well. But it's basically this process within Scientology where you get audited, I think is the way to put it. You are sitting with a higher ranked person within Scientology, and you're kind of just going through this process that is very unique to Scientology. So basically that means that like Scientology has to be involved in whatever process that she decides to use to have her grievances heard. All right. At the preliminary hearing, Jen B testified that she took that to mean that I could not go to the police. Could be. That could be. And so I mean, that is one perspective. There might be another perspective that the defense then puts forward. But we'll see. Masterson's defense lawyers protested that the letter did not address that. And they argued that Scientology doctrine does not actually forbid members from going to the police. Olmedo barred prosecutors from calling and I if they say that and there happens to be some kind of records that are available to the prosecution showing like, it may not be explicitly stated, but here's X, Y, and Z process, and here's all the things that they basically like lay out the four corners of it, and they paint a picture, a connect the dot kind of picture where you're supposed to connect the dots yourself. The prosecution can totally introduce that kind of evidence to rebut that if that exists. So again, it's going to be interesting to see that play out. Olmedo barred prosecutors from calling Claire Headley, an ex-Scientologist and church critic who was supposed to testify about church teachings. So much of the theological parsing may be left up to the jury. So that's interesting. They're not going to be allowing them to talk about the teachings of Scientology, but maybe just the process that they went through. That could be beneficial to Masterson. That could be beneficial to the other side. It really depends on how these things are framed and just like I said, like what kind of dots are placed, on on the page, right? For folks to connect, for the jury to connect. Jen B did ultimately go to the police in 2004, but the DA's office declined to file charges. Now that's an interesting thing for the DA to say, because that is not a fault of the individual, and I'm sure there's records on it. They said they couldn't file because he was a celebrity. One girl wasn't enough, she testified. She said she cried after the decision was made. Years later, she would be put in touch with Trout and Colonel Bixler, and they went to the LAPD, which reopened the investigation. Trout has alleged that Masterson SA'd her at his house sometime in late 2003. Asked on the stand last year to explain why she had not reported the incident at the time, even to church authorities, she explained that Masterson was a celebrity and, quote, his status offers more to the church, unquote. Now that one is going to be a little bit more of an uphill battle to explain, right? Because that's someone kind of like making I mean, if you are looking at from her perspective, she's making an assumption. If you're looking at it from the perspective of Masterson, you're saying, I mean, like how, like you're using that excuse now because he happens to be a celebrity and he happened to be a celebrity at the time, but you also could be simply just saying that conveniently now, right? There's possibilities. So how that's going to play out, again, it's going to be interesting. Everybody was made aware within the church that certain people who are of a celebrity status are to be protected in a certain way, she said. They have a lot more power in terms of ethics responses from the higher ups in the church. And that is a possibility, right? Anytime we are talking about an organization that has a certain hierarchical structure, when somebody and this is whether it's religious or secular, when we're talking about an organization that has a hierarchy, that has, people that are in power, whenever we're talking about allegations against people that are a little bit higher up on the pyramid, so to speak, then there's always a possibility that the organization legitimately wants to protect those individuals because it has an interest in those individuals having a good face, right? Because if especially if they are outward facing for that organization, whether that's right or wrong, I personally think that would be wrong. That sounds like corruption, and I don't like that. But whether that is actually happening here is going to come out at trial. The accusers have now told their stories many times in police interviews, church proceedings, civil proceedings, and to friends and family. The defense, now led by attorneys Philip Cohen, Karen Goldstein, and Sean Hawley, is expected to try to expose discrepancies in those accounts and to argue that the allegations have evolved to become more violent and disturbing over time. Now, this is interesting. This is something that I just actually recently noticed. I don't know why this only dawned on me, but Sean Hawley is one of the attorneys for Danny Masterson. She's also an attorney for Trevor Bauer. And I know that a lot of times when people talk about, this attorney represented this client and like therefore they're a scumbag. I think that we need to remember that attorneys are professionals, and attorneys take cases not even necessarily because they 100% believe that someone is true or is, absolutely correct or absolutely incorrect. But because they think that they can do a good job, and because they think that they can fulfill or do their best job for what the client wants and needs at the time. I mean, if attorneys only represented people that were 100% clean, we wouldn't have anybody at the public defender's office, right? Because there are plenty of people that come through the public defender's office who are guilty as sin. And, the public defender's job is basically to make sure that, like, first and foremost, to make sure that the state, to make sure that the prosecutor doesn't overstep the defendant's constitutional rights. So there are so many different layers to goals in terms of representation in these cases, and so we don't know how Sean Hawley looks at these cases, but I will say, she represents Masterson. That's one SA defendant. She represents Trevor Bauer. That's another SA defendant that we've talked about on this channel. And that case is super interesting. We talked about some very conflicting evidence that has come out that raises a lot of questions about the alleged victims' allegations there. But Sean Hawley also, interestingly enough, represents Evan Rachel Wood, someone who has made deviant accusations against Marilyn Manson. So she's a very interesting character in all of these different cases, because she's obviously taking cases that are sometimes, in opposition to one another in terms of philosophy, because sometimes you'll have attorneys that take only defense cases. Sometimes you'll have attorneys that take only plaintiff cases. In all of these cases, Sean Hawley is on defense, right? Because this is the Evan Rachel Wood case is where Evan Rachel Wood is actually on defense there, right? Because Marilyn Manson has come out and said there's IIED, there's defamation coming up because she's made these allegations. But philosophically speaking, Sean Hawley has taken very different cases, right? Because some people feel very, very passionately about the Marilyn Manson case. And they might feel passionately about these other cases. So it's very interesting to point out that this attorney has taken some philosophically opposed kind of cases here. Just want to highlight that for folks. The prosecution, led by Reinhold Mueller and Ariel Anson, also sought to introduce as many as 27 separate incidents of harassment and stalking, which the accusers allege came in response to their decision to go to the police. As she did at the preliminary hearing, Olmedo said she would allow some general testimony on that subject to show the witness's state of mind, but would keep it within strict limits. We're not going to start off going into a whole bunch of different instances, the judge said. Oh, and that's a very abrupt ending to this article. But that's it's 27 separate incidents. That's a lot. That's a lot. And so yeah, the judge definitely sounds like we've got some messaging from the judge here that she's really going to try to manage this with a tight ship, but she's got quite a job in front of her, because there's a lot of moving pieces here. So that is this article. And before I go to the next one, let me get some new super chats and whatnot. Vicky at the warehouse, thanks so much for the super sticker. That's so kind of you. Very generous of you. Vicky at the warehouse also became a YouTube member. Welcome to Bike Club. Very happy to have you here, and I hope you have fun with us. This is great. I love it. Antarega also became a member. Welcome to Bike Club, Antarega. Love it. Happy to have you here. Andy the Game Maker. Law and Lumber says you should use the slogan, "This YouTube video is not going to like itself." Or was it me? Sounds more like him. Andy, that probably is you. but thank you for the super chat, my brother. Love you very much. Dark Spartan 45 also became a YouTube member. Welcome to Bike Club. Very, very, very happy to have you here as well. Love to see it. Love to see it. Okay. Let's do the next article. Now, this one's still on Danny Masterson because, like I said, I'm trying to find articles where we've got, articles that are coming from different kinds of perspectives, perhaps, so that we can maybe piece some things together. But we'll see, because who knows? Maybe everybody's talking about the same thing. All right, here is what ABC7 has to say about the case. Jury selection begins in SA trial of That 70s Show Danny Masterson, star Danny Masterson. 3 alleged victims are expected to take the stand this week, along with Lisa Marie Presley, according to sources. That's going to be very interesting. Jury selection began Tuesday in the trial of actor and That 70s Show star Danny Masterson, who is charged with drugging 3 women and assaulting them at his Hollywood Hills home, and it's expected to include testimony on the Church of Scientology. Masterson, now 46, was charged in June 2020 with 3 counts of SA by force or fear. He allegedly SA'd a 23-year-old woman between January and December 2001. He is also charged with SAing a woman who was 28 at the time, and a 23-year-old woman he had invited to his home sometime between October and December 2003, according to Deputy District Attorney Reinhold Mueller. Masterson is a longtime adherent of the Church of Scientology, and the alleged victims were also Scientology members. On the one hand, it's a fairly simple case of SA with awful allegations, but it's wrapped up in this Scientology thing because Danny Masterson is not only a Scientology celebrity, the 3 women he's accused of SAing all were Scientologists at the time, said Tony Ortega, editor of The Underground Bunker and the trial's pool reporter on Thursday. So Danny Ortega this is a former Scientologist. Aaron referred to him as well. I think it sounds like they know each other pretty well. And it's going to be interesting to see what Tony Ortega comes out of this trial with on a daily basis. It sounds like he's going to be there every day. So this is an interesting quote here. But it should be noted, though. It should be noted that he is somebody who is a former Scientologist. So he probably has also been through the fair game kind of stuff. He probably has been through a number of things that make him feel, come at a case like this possibly from a different perspective because of his experiences leaving the Church of Scientology. That is always a possibility. Not saying that is the case, though, right? But I'm just keeping that in mind. The actor maintains the sex was consensual. A civil suit filed in August 2019 against Masterson and the Church of Scientology by the 3 women involved in the criminal case, and 1 woman who was not a member of the church alleges they were stalked and harassed after filing SA allegations against the actor with Los Angeles police. The issue is that women say they didn't come forward sooner because they were worried about retaliation from the Church of Scientology, Ortega said. That's why the judge is allowing some testimony about Scientology. That sounds to be correct. All 3 alleged victims are expected to take the stand along with Lisa Marie Presley, according to Ortega. The district attorney's office declined to file SA charges against Masterson in 2 other alleged incidents, citing insufficient evidence on one and the statute of limitations on the other. All right. Interesting stuff. So the conversation about Scientology is one that will be ongoing and one that will be basically it's something that the 2 sides are going to be probably jostling with throughout this entire trial. So we are going to talk about Kevin Spacey next. But before I do that, another super chat. Leela, thanks so much for your super chat. Says, hola from Mexico or from Mexico, Alita. Hola, buenos dias. I hope you're having a great day. Thanks so much for the super chat. It's very kind of you. And I hope you're having a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Okay. So let me pull this up here. We're going to talk about the next one. Kevin Spacey. This one's got some more substance, right? Because this one it not only has trial not only has this trial started, but it has started at basically a lightning pace. So, all right. Just taking a note there for timestamps and whatnot. Let's get into it. So this first article is from October 11th. And like I said, before with the previous cases, we're doing a little bit of catch up here. We've got an article from Deadline called Kevin Spacey Lawyer Blitzes Anthony Rapp in Cross-Examination of $40 million Civil Trial Update. So yeah, Anthony Rapp is suing Kevin Spacey civilly in this one. The previous two were criminal cases. And this one is civil, and he's suing Kevin Spacey for $40 million. So two questions are going to be in front of the jury here. Number one, is Kevin Spacey liable for the claims that have been made in this case? And number two, if he is liable, if he has done things that are wrong in this case, is it worth $40 million? That's going to be up to the jury. And we're going to see as we go along the evidence that is going to be coming up. We'll see. Now, of course, obviously we are, like I said before, we're going through this with reporting from the media. Who knows what they have left out? Who knows what they have left in? But hopefully they have taken a good full, a good faith sort of reporting on these events. Okay, so this article is a little bit funky because of the fact that they've got updates at the top. So I'm going to try to find where it basically kind of starts and then kind of pull back up again. All right. Okay, give me a second here. Okay, we'll start at previously 9:17 a.m. So this was back on Monday, I believe. Okay. So in my last video, that was a trial update on the Kevin Spacey case. I talked about how, like I mentioned in just a few minutes ago, this case is taken off at lightning speed, right? Because we've already seated a jury very quickly. Then they went through opening statements. Then like boom, 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 they've got witnesses. They've got multiple witnesses that have been on the stand, including the plaintiff himself. So previously 9:17 a.m., Anthony Rapp was back on the witness stand today in the $40 million sexual misconduct civil trial of two-time Oscar winner Kevin Spacey. The Star Trek Discovery actor accuses Spacey of fondling him and trapping him inside a New York apartment in 1986 when Rapp was 14 years old. He went public with his claims in October 2017. And this is there's a little bit of nuance that's left out of this right now, because we know that Rapp made accusations around 2001 that were kind of generic and didn't specifically name Spacey, but that he actually came out fully with naming Spacey in 2017. So it's similar to sort of the timeline of events that Evan Rachel Wood came out with, right? That she was making statements about that she had been abused by someone in the past, by two people in the past. And then it wasn't until a period of time had passed that she said, this is who it was. So, whether that matters or not for this particular situation, I don't know. But, it's just, it is interesting to point out that little bit of nuance. Under continued questioning from his own lawyers, Broadway vet Rapp testified Tuesday that he continued to see Spacey films, including The Usual Suspects, Glengarry Glen Ross, Glengarry Glen Ross, LA Confidential, and Seven, in the years following the incident out of a sense of obligation to his own love of film and development as an actor. I'm an actor and I love films, he told court. I felt it was part of my job to see them. And it's interesting that they even go into this in the first place, right? So like why do they go into this in direct examination, right? Because this is questioning from his own lawyers. That means that we're on direct examination. This is the friendly side, right? This is where the attorney is asking questions that are open-ended, and so he's able to really fully explain things and give his side. This is arguably to get ahead of bad facts that they figure are going to be coming out um, on cross-examination, right? Because it's interesting that this must have come out during discovery, right? Maybe in a deposition or something, to say that he still went to go see Kevin Spacey films despite the things that he says happened to him. And that's an interesting point, right? Because if somebody has made allegations about something, but then it looks like they're a fan of their work, they're seeking out their appearance in work. Why are they doing that? Are they doing that because, they didn't actually suffer anything from this person? Or is there some other reason? And so this is the reason that they have supplied before the cross-examination, before the opposing attorney even has a chance to come in and say, what the heck is up with this? Right? So getting ahead of bad facts here, potentially bad facts, right? Or at least taking out the sting and giving an explanation before he's in the hot seat. And this is, we do know that he's in Star Trek Discovery. It's not, doesn't show up here. I mean, we do know he's a Broadway vet, but he was also in Rent, right? Like he was in the original cast. And I think he reprised his role for the film that came out. So this is a guy who is not just like a quote unquote actor, right? Somebody who like says that they're an actor, but this is somebody who is, he has some notoriety in his own name. He has seen some success, whether that's the same thing as Kevin Spacey. No, we can be honest about that, right? He doesn't quite have the same level of stature of Kevin Spacey, but he does have some notoriety on his own in his own resume, right? Like his IMDb profile, he's got his own resume. Um, and so the argument does have some merit, right? Like it does sound reasonable to say, like, I'm an actor and I love films. I felt it was part of my job to see them because, we can all agree Kevin Spacey has done all of these things. He is a phenomenal actor, right? It is reasonable to say these things that it may tarnish how we see his performances as an actor, knowing the things that he supposedly has done. But regardless, we can say, like, it is perfectly legitimate to say he's a fantastic actor. He just happens to be doing these terrible things behind the scenes. And whether that means that you want to continue to see his films or not is a very nuanced discussion. But it does make sense here to say I felt that it was part of my job because I am viewing the work and the craft of someone who is legitimately very good at his job. And in order for me to continue learning about acting, in order for me to continue developing my craft, it is helpful to watch the performances of other people. And whether that's Spacey or whether that's he actually is interested in studying the performances of other actors that are in these films, right? Because some of these are really big films, really great actors that have worked with Kevin Spacey. But the last Best Picture Oscar winner, American Beauty, in which Kevin Spacey's character has a sexual relationship with a teenage girl. I totally butchered that sentence. Let me try that again. But the last was Best Picture Oscar winner, American Beauty, in which Spacey's character has a sexual relationship with a teenage girl. And that was especially difficult to be in the presence of, Rapp said, because it felt unpleasantly familiar. And so that might be the other reason why this is coming up on direct as well, is to say, like, look, here's the reason why. But also, when I happen to see it, this is something that's sort of like renewed all of these feelings that I had gone through. With those movies, he could brace himself for seeing Spacey, Rapp testified. But 1988's Working Girl was different because he didn't know beforehand Spacey would be on screen. Kevin Spacey came on the screen and it was as if someone had poked me with a cattle prod. I felt like I jumped out of my seat. Rapp said that reaction, adrenaline, and sweaty palms continues even to this day. He said that he saw Spacey entering the courthouse this morning and felt the same quote unquote cattle prod. Rapp's allegations were among several that made Spacey an early focus of the hashtag #MeToo movement. The American Beauty and The Usual Suspects Oscar winner and multiple House of Cards Emmy nominee faces trial in the UK for alleged SA, and that case set for June. With that case set for June, and he is on the hook for $31 million awarded to House of Cards producers Media Rights Capital because the claims hastened the end of the show and were deemed a breach of his acting and producing agreements. Right? Because there's a morality clause in a lot of these agreements, right? For these folks. And we can definitely have conversations about these morality clauses and whether they are overly broad so that they can be basically interpreted as like anything the production company or whoever, has the ability to make these decisions as to, what is a violation of this. If it's worded in such a way that is overly broad, sometimes that can be an improper clause in a contract, or is it legit? I think a lot of people have some opinions as to whether or not it's legit in this particular case with Spacey. As with all the accusations against him made over the past several years, Spacey denies anything inappropriate ever occurred. Today's testimony by Rapp continues after an initial emotional time on the stand for the Discovery actor on October 7th. Under the questioning of his own lawyer, Rapp detailed last week his allegation that a glass-eyed, then 26-year-old Spacey scooped him up after the Reagan-era party at the older actor's apartment and climbed on top of the then teenager on the bed. I knew something was wrong, Rapp testified, as Spacey sat no more than 30 feet away in the Manhattan federal courtroom. I had this feeling I had to get out of there. What I was also feeling was frozen. Rapp declared that after escaping from Spacey's wait, he hid in the small apartment's bathroom before scurrying out of the Upper East Side pad. Are you sure you want to leave? Spacey asked, according to Rapp, who made it very clear he desperately wanted out of there. The story, and I just for reporting purposes, I will say I have a little bit of a problem with this last phrase, right? Who made it very clear he desperately wanted, and that's not in quotations. Oh, well, I mean, I guess maybe it's okay because it says, according to Rapp, who made it very clear he desperately wanted out of there. I still wish that they would have said who said he made it very clear he desperately wanted out of there. Maybe I'm being ticky tacky. I don't know. Maybe you guys feel differently. But that's my take. Calling balls and strikes here. The story first became public in October 2017, not long after the New York Times printed their visceral expose of Harvey Weinstein's years of alleged SA and harassment. Swimming with Sharks star Spacey almost immediately denied the allegations and took the opportunity to come out as a gay man. Along with the since dismissed pseudonym oh my gosh, oh, Mr. Meow.
Can you talk about Alex Jones?
No. Say hi to Holmes. He looks so happy to be here. Okay, don't wreak havoc now. Thank you. Before I was interrupted. Okay, let's go back to this article here. Okay, along with the since dismissed pseudonym CD plaintiff, Rapp sued Spacey in 2020 under New York's Child Victims Act. Rapp is expected to be cross-examined by Spacey's defense team later today. Before the rent vet first sat before the jury late last week, two other live witnesses, Rapp friend Christopher Denny and Andy Holzman, took the stand, as did Sean Snow by video deposition. Aiming to counter the defense's contention that Rapp never told anyone about what he says happened with Spacey because he made the whole thing up, Denny and Snow both told the court that their friend had in fact told them about the incident in the 1990s. Now, of course, the jury is going to be evaluating those witnesses, right? For their biases, for their memory, for their perception. All of these things are at play because these are personal friends of Anthony Rapp, right? So unfortunately, we were not able to see the way that they came across on the stand. So we don't know really how the jury may have interpreted their testimony. Did they look shifty? Did they look, I don't know. Or did they look like they were just saying it like it was? Okay. Also accusing Spacey of SA and impropriety. Holtzman said that the actor groped and grinded up against him backstage at the New York Shakespeare Festival Public Theater in 1981. Spacey has denied Holtzman's claims in a deposition given prior to the rap trial. So, and that's an interesting point here too, that Holtzman not only is apparently a friend of Rap's. Oh wait, no, never mind. Okay, hang on. No, I'm conflating people here. Denny and Snow are the friends. Holtzman is the one who says that he also encountered an experience with him. And I talked about that, his direct and his cross-examination in the previous recap video. In a trial that is whipping along far faster than anticipated, when the proceedings began on October 6th, American Beauty alum Spacey looks certain to take the stand himself later this week. Not that the now working again Spacey's legal troubles. I don't like the way that sentence was crafted. It's not particularly clear, but okay, let's get through it. Not that the now working again Spacey's legal troubles will be over if he wins this civil case in the Big Apple. I wish that would have been completely rephrased. Basically, he's still got issues because he's got other legal issues, even if he wins this one, and even though he's working again. Weird phrase. Having seen an indecent assault and battery case dropped by Massachusetts prosecutors and settled an SA case with the estate of a massage therapist in 2019, the former Old Vic artistic director is set to go to court in the UK next summer for another SA trial, undoubtedly watching his bank accounts drained by legal bills. The actor also still has the annoying matter. I wish they wouldn't have editorialized that. The annoying matter is okay, whatever. Maybe it's annoying. Maybe it is actually annoying, but maybe it's more than annoying for him because it's $31 million here. Anyway, the actor still has the annoying matter of the $31 million that was awarded to House of Cards producers MRC back in late 2020 because his alleged misconduct on the Netflix political drama constituted a material breach of his acting and executive producing contracts. This trial looks to wrap up later this week or early next week. Now, this is the end of the article, but we really started partway through. So let's try to pick up where they kind of come back with updates. So that was the morning session. And then let's try to find, okay, updated with the latest. Okay. Now, this is admittedly a little bit curious, the way that they've organized the timeline on this one. But we'll work our way through it. We'll figure it out. We'll piece this all together. Okay. Then at the top of this article, where they updated it for the afternoon session. To paraphrase the old Blondie song, Kevin Spacey's lawyers today tried to rip Anthony Rapp to shreds. That's rough. It's rough if you are looking at it from Anthony Rapp's perspective, right? From a potential victim's perspective, or if you are coming from the defendant's perspective, that they have, like I said, they said in their opening statement, the defense, that this is a case where Anthony Rapp has a personal vendetta and he's just trying to destroy him, and he's jealous of Kevin Spacey's career because he has never made it as big as Kevin Spacey has, and Kevin Spacey's this big star. And so this is basically their overall arguments, and they came in really hot, and so they have to continue that, which means boldly that they have to go hard against this particular plaintiff. And it's interesting because they did have, I mean, when we talk about courtroom optics, right? We talk about what does it look like when a particular lawyer is cross-examining a witness, if they're going hard, right? Like when we talked about Camille Vasquez going hard against Amber Heard, it looked very different than it would have looked if Ben Chew had gone very hard at Amber Heard. She kind of had more leeway in sort of taking the gloves off and being able to just really go go essentially full board on Amber Heard in a way that Ben Chu could not have, because the optics would have looked really bad. Now, in this case, we've got a similar situation where we've got um, Jennifer Keller from Spacey's side here, who is cross-examining Anthony Rapp and going pretty intensely here. So she's essentially, it looks like the attack dog on the team, from what it looks like. And we're going to see how a little bit of that comes out. We'll get a little bit of a flavor of what this is looking like. Picking up on the core of her opening statement last week in the $40 million civil trial, Spacey attorney Jennifer Keller's cross-examination repeatedly targeted apparent inconsistencies and vague elements on the Star Trek Discovery actor's recollection of the events in and around Spacey's New York City apartment in 1986. And she clearly rattled Rapp to some degree, with Spacey sitting just a few feet away. And Judge Lewis A. Kaplan didn't offer the plaintiff witness much solace as Keller hammered away at him. Toward the end of the first part of today's proceedings in the Manhattan Federal Courthouse, the judge asked Keller how much longer her cross of Rapp would take. With some degree of understatement, Keller replied that it would be a while. A little bit. Turns out it's maybe a lot of bit. Picking up after the lunch break, Keller noted in her cross that Rapp gave an award speech in 2018 crediting the Lupita Nyong'o article in the New York Times about her experiences with Harvey Weinstein, with prompting him to come forward about Spacey. Earlier, questioned by his lawyer, Peter Segure, Rapp had said Nyong'o's experience of having to repeatedly see Weinstein after being harassed by him resonated. And then on cross-examination, it's simply not true that her article inspired you, is it? Keller asked Rapp. I don't know how that can't be true, he replied. So basically saying, look, Lupita Nyong'o was an inspiration to me. Her message in her 2017 op-ed in the New York Times about her experiences with Harvey Weinstein resonated with me. They inspired me. How could they not have? He's saying on cross-examination. But then it looks like he runs into a little bit of trouble with some inconsistencies. She then pulled up a copy of the article dated October 19th, 2017, then showed screenshots of his text to BuzzFeed reporter Adam Very, a friend, initiating contact about Spacey. The first of them is dated October 11th, 8 days earlier, in which Rapp wrote, I'm wanting to speak about someone else very powerful in our industry. Very texted back 2 days later, I think everyone here wants to be sure your story has the strongest impact possible. Now, multiple things that I want to say about this exchange in this paragraph. Okay, so number one, obviously there's this timing issue that Keller wants to point out, saying, you said in an acceptance speech, you credited Lupita Nyong'o, about her experiences with Harvey Weinstein and how she came forward and she wrote this op-ed in the New York Times. You credited her for inspiring you. That's not true, is it? And then he says, well, I don't know how that couldn't be true. How would that not be true, right? Because she made a very bold move. It was very scary for her. And it made me decide that I wanted to do something also bold, despite despite the fact that I have been going through all of these hardships. I finally felt that the stage is set, that I am finally comfortable to come forward. But the problem with that is that he's already got communications with a journalist saying, I want to come forward on October 11th, 2017. That's 8 days before her article. So either he's lying about it, or maybe he just with hindsight, he's mistaken. Maybe he's sort of blended those 8 days after however many, 5 years now. This is 5 years later at this point, almost to the day, right? That he's doing that. And so there's potentially a time issue. Whether the jury cares about that is another question, right? Because the jury may look at that and say, like, okay, but that doesn't mean that the allegations aren't real. So this may have nailed him a little bit, or maybe not. Maybe it doesn't stick. And then there's this text back from the journalist, right? Saying, very texted back 2 days later, I think everyone here wants to be sure your story has the strongest impact possible. That sounds very familiar, right? That sounds very familiar with another case that we covered. That feels to me like it sounds a lot like uh, the Washington Post with Amber Heard, right? Communications came out about her op-ed in the Washington Post with them talking about, we want to make sure that there's maximum impact, right? We want to make sure that this is big. We want to make sure that this makes a splash, because it kind of shows like like they have an interest in maybe exaggerating things, maybe maybe making things look worse than they actually were, because if it makes more of a splash, it is more impactful, and that means that more people are reading the article, right? Because it's how you get an entire trial talking about the Washington Post, for better or for worse, right? Could be that bad press is good press, right? Some people take that kind of perspective. So that could be the angle that they're maybe going through by revealing that sort of response from the journalist. What, again, whether that sticks for the jury is another matter. Okay. And quick pause here. Sandra Ramirez, thanks so much for gifting 10 Legal Bites memberships. That is so kind, so generous of you. I love to see it. Love, love, love. And to everybody that's now in Bike Club, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay. Alrighty, let's continue with the article. So, so she pulls out this discrepancy between October 19th with the op-ed and October 11th, where he says, like, hey, I want to speak about somebody very powerful in our industry. And then Rapp then testified, it was how I remember the events unfolding when I thought back on them. Yeah. Whether the jury believes that or not could come down to his demeanor. It could come down to a number of factors. Keller then asked scornfully, they weren't 31 years old, were they? They weren't 31 years old. I'm not sure. What is that referring to? 31 years old. Is that referring to the claims that are 31 years old? Anyway, okay, well, let's move on. She argued that the Nyong'o anecdote would be useful to you to get more sympathy, but Rapp denied that, saying he conflated the New York Times op-ed with the wider Weinstein hashtag #MeToo revelations. So basically what she's getting at in this cross-examination is saying, look, you're capitalizing on the movement. This is why you came out around this time. You're capitalizing. You're trying to garner more sympathy. You're trying to sort of like cloak yourself in this movement so that you can make these allegations with less scrutiny. And he's just saying, no, that's an 8-day span. That's 5 years ago. And I just conflated those dates. Again, up to the jury to figure out what they are going to believe. Judge Kaplan admonished Rapp multiple times to answer only the questions he was asked. This will all go a lot better for you if you just listen to the question and answer the question, Kaplan said at one point. Finally, Rapp said about the op-ed inspiring him to speak out, that was not true. Ooh, that's it looks like Rapp got nailed on something then. Whether the nailing was noticed by the jury is another matter, but if he's getting admonished by the judge on this point, that means that he's being particularly difficult, and the judge is having to intervene to tell him in front of the jury, yo, you got to answer the question that's in front of you. Don't answer more than that. This is cross-examination. This is what you're supposed to do here. So he's clearly kind of like trying to answer something different. And the cross-examiner is saying, nope, you've got to get back in my box, because this is my cross-examination. I'm taking control here. And then he finally says that was not true. So he's now said to the jury, Lupita Nyong'o's New York Times op-ed actually didn't inspire me, because, I kind of just used that. That's a hit point for the Spacey team, for better or for worse. Whether it makes a difference, whether it adds up, we'll see. Keller continued to focus on details in the BuzzFeed article, which Rapp said was accurate, including a passage that read he and fellow actor and friend John Barrowman, a high school student visiting from the Chicago area, met Spacey in Manhattan at one of those late night post-show gatherings where actors from different casts gather and mingle. The attorney said they met Spacey backstage after a Sunday matinee of Long Day's Journey into Night, where they were also introduced to cast member Jack Lemmon. When Keller asked what other casts were gathering and mingling, Rapp began another long answer and was chastised by the judge again. The actor ultimately said he omitted the Lemmon meeting until he was deposed and under oath. So this is another inconsistency that it seems like they nailed him on. Keller then challenged Rapp's story that suggested Spacey was picking out two underage boys at a late night event to invite them to a nightclub, the Limelight, noting Barrowman was more than 4 years older than Rapp. So basically saying, look, you're trying to paint this picture as Spacey was trying to pick up two underage kids. You were 14. This guy was more than 4 years older than you, meaning he was 18, meaning he was technically an adult. So kind of pointing that out to the jury, saying, he's muddying this here. He's not exactly being accurate here. The lawyer then focused on Barrowman's own deposition, in which he recalled details that Rapp did not. Among those was the three of them having dinner after the meet and greet with Lemmon and going back to Spacey's apartment later that night, where Barrowman and Spacey flirted with him and gave him a gentle push onto the bed, and that something sexual might have happened, except that Rapp was nearby in the bathroom. Interesting. Rapp has said Spacey that gave him... I think that they maybe mix these up. Rapp has said that Spacey gave him a slip of paper with his address and phone number, but that he didn't go there until the now infamous party. It was right after Mr. Barrowman was deposed you realized you had a problem with your story, Keller said. Rapp replied, I don't dispute his story. I just don't remember it. And so again, we're talking about memory here. This is an issue that all of these witnesses are going to have to contend with. So this is the finishing the direct and now the cross examination on October 11th. And now we've got one more article to go through here. But before we do, April K, welcome to Bike Club. Happy to have you here. Very happy to have you here. Rose Hawk, also a new member. Welcome to Bike Club. Thrilled to have you here. April K, this is my first ever super chat. I appreciate and value your work. Thanks for being here. Your input and contributions to legal analysis are so valuable. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And thank you for the very generous super chat. I really, really appreciate it. Those are such kind words. Mac Pipkin, thanks so much for the super sticker coming right in here. I can, and it's funny when I can catch it when it comes in, I can actually see the sticker says what the sticker says. It says, keep it up. Thank you so much. I'd love to see it. All right. Okay. One last article, because this one is going to be from yesterday. So we've got some more updates here to get caught up on in the Spacey trial. All right. Here we go. We got an article from Fox News Channel. Kevin Spacey's accuser, Anthony Rapp, gets emotional at trial. I knew I was not the only one. Spacey will face another trial next year in London. Now, I will say this, after having read the article, I don't like the fact that they have this in the headline, this quote, I knew I was not the only one, because that is a very compelling statement. However, as we will see in this article, in the substance of this article, we will see that this is a statement that was actually improper and was stricken from the record. And so the jury is not supposed to be considering this statement. Now, of course, I'll go into more in detail, but my main point here is I don't like the fact that this is in the title, because it seems like this is something that the jury's going to be considering. This is a very compelling point. Of course it is. Of course it is. it sounds very, very emotional. But I think well, we'll get into it. I don't like the fact that this is in the title. All right, Spacey will face another trial next year in London. So here's a photo of Anthony Rapp and Kevin Spacey. Okay. Actor Anthony Rapp got emotional in a New York courtroom on Wednesday. Rapp testified Wednesday that he decided to publicly reveal a 30-year-old encounter with Kevin Spacey because he knew he wasn't the only person Spacey had made inappropriate sexual advances on. Toward the end of the third day of testimony in the civil sex abuse lawsuit Rapp brought against Spacey in Manhattan federal court, his voice shook as he commented in response to a question about his motivations. I came forward because I knew I was not the only one who Kevin Spacey made inappropriate sexual advances to, Rapp said. An objection led Judge Louis A. Kaplan to quickly announce that the comment would be stricken from the record. The jury has not been permitted to hear most other claims made against Spacey. Now, and this is one of the strategic points of asking these kinds of questions, right? Technically, it has been stricken from the record. That means that they are technically not supposed to be considering what he said in that statement, because, and the reason why it's been stricken from the record is because it's pure speculation, right? What is that based off of? Like, how does he know that Kevin Spacey made these inappropriate advances on these other individuals? Was he there? Did he see it? Probably didn't say that. He probably just said, I know that these other things have happened. How? Because I heard about them. That's based on hearsay. That's improper to bring in as testimony into trial. So that's why I don't like the fact that the title has that statement in there, because not necessarily that it's like, it's misleading the public. That's part of it, but also because it's the public might be thinking that the jury is based off of that title. The public might be thinking that the jury is considering something that they're not supposed to. And of course, in all reality, once you let the cat out of the bag, like, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, right? Maybe I'm mixing up my metaphors here, but the point is that, like, once the jury has heard something, it's kind of hard to ignore it. Don't think about purple elephants. What are you thinking about? Probably purple elephants. So hey, the plaintiff side, of course, is regardless of whether that objection was sustained or overruled, jury still heard it if they were paying attention. All right. Rapp is seeking $40 million for psychological injuries. Afterward, Rapp elaborated on his claim that a 26-year-old Spacey lifted him onto a bed after a party at his Manhattan apartment in 1986 and pressed his clothed body against the clothed body of Rapp, then 14, before he squirmed out and ran into a bathroom before leaving the apartment. Now, this is interesting here because so far in reporting that I've seen, this detail about two clothed bodies, that's interesting to me, right? Because it kind of suggests that perhaps there's maybe less merit for Anthony Rapp's claims. Maybe. I mean, there's still the age difference and the age, you can say, stature difference at the time that this happened. Like, we're still literally talking about a 14-year-old and a 26-year-old. So there's going to be some level of inappropriateness going on here, right? Like, regardless of this, but it's an interesting detail that I have yet to see reported elsewhere, that these are, like this is something that is inappropriate, but this kind of hints at the possibility that the jury might not find this unlawful. Maybe not. Like I said, there's still that massive age difference there, and not just massive age difference, but the difference between a child and an adult. Someone who is clearly a child and someone who's clearly an adult. So let's continue on. It was something that happened to me that was not okay, Rapp said. Defense attorney Jennifer Keller finished her cross-examination of Rapp by attacking his credibility on the impact he claimed his encounter with Spacey had on the rest of his life. Rap 50 is a regular on Star Trek Discovery on television. He was part of the original Broadway cast of Rent and has performed in movies including Adventures in Babysitting. I have not heard of this film. I don't know. I don't always I'm not particularly tuned in, I guess, to new films these days, but um maybe that's one that folks know of, but Adventures in Babysitting, I've never that one I've personally never heard of. Um so maybe other folks have. Keller noted that he had told a therapist that after the Spacey encounter, he sought out sexual attention. Now, this is an interesting detail too, right? Because we're talking about a doctor and a patient communication, which generally speaking is confidential, right? There's a certain privilege for doctors and patients for the communications between the two. Um, and but where the information that comes out of the medical services that are being provided has something to do with something that has been put at issue essentially in the case, especially if it's been put at issue by the plaintiff, um, is where you're going to be able to pierce through that confidentiality in these kinds of cases. So we saw that in the Amber Heard case, the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard case, where she had made at issue her particular mental health status because she said, I suffered PTSD as a result of all of these things. So she alleged that, which meant they were able to get an independent medical examination out of her and not out of him because he didn't make the same sort of claims as part of his damages. So here it seems that he probably has alleged as part of the intentional infliction of emotional distress claim or one of the other claims here, that he had a serious deficit in his mental health that resulted from this. And that's part of his damages, right? So any kind of information that the defense can use to rebut that claim, to rebut the damages piece, they're allowed to go into, right? Because that's just like fair is fair. You make one claim, you've got to back it up. If you make one claim and the other side finds information that is contradictory to the claim that you're making, they're allowed to use that. That's fair. So Keller noted that he had told a therapist that after the Spacey encounter, he sought out sexual attention. Yes, Rapp responded. He said he began to be aware of people's attention toward him in ways he hadn't before. And so it seems like his suggestion is that that was a result of this experience, that he was improperly sort of seeking this kind of attention, and that it was causing issues for him for his mental health. Keller then asked if it was unusual for someone going through puberty to gain an interest in sex. Don't you think that after boys go through puberty, they develop an intense interest in sex? Come on, Mr. Rapp, she said. Come on, she says. So you can tell that this is from the last article, we could tell very, very quickly that this was a pretty intense cross-examination for Mr. Rapp. And this continues here. So she basically is saying, like, look, there's a certain thing that happens around this age. It's universal. It's not because of your experiences. It's because of the age that you happen to be at. And then he says, what is the question? It's not that simple, Rapp responded. On Tuesday, Rapp was also grilled by the defense in the civil trial. Rapp admitted on the stand that there are flaws to his story, as we saw in the other article. While the accuser remembers and has testified that the incident happened in a bedroom at Spacey's Upper East Side apartment in Manhattan, Spacey's attorney got Rapp to admit it is possible there was no bedroom and that Spacey actually lived in a studio, which could be an important detail. Let me get the last sentence in this article, and then I'll opine a little bit more. While the case is in civil court and Rapp is seeking financial damages, the House of Cards star is facing a criminal trial next year in London. Okay, everybody likes to point that out. And that's important because he's got a lot of legal troubles here. But this point right here about Spacey's attorney got Rapp to admit it is possible there was no bedroom, that Spacey actually lived in a studio. Now, depending on the exchange that resulted in this coming out, this jury can look at it multiple ways, but that does to me seem a little bit problematic for Rap's story here, right? Because if it's a studio apartment, this is like, if you're familiar, like let's talk about a studio versus a one bedroom apartment. It means that there's no door between the bedroom area and the rest of the space. It means it's a very tight space. It's going to be, especially if it's in New York, it's like the size of a shoebox, right? Notoriously, apartments in New York are like teeny tiny and super expensive for a teeny tiny amount of space. So there's this point here saying like he wasn't in this big apartment. He was in this teeny tiny little studio apartment. Is it possible? Can you possibly, can you say that is possible for that to have been the case? And he says that's possible, meaning, he admits that he doesn't have full clarity on the size of the space, which means what level of privacy, of intimacy was there for for Spacey to have this opportunity to make this kind of a move that Rapp says that he made on him, that does call into question the legitimacy of Rapp's claims. And maybe the jury will buy that, maybe they won't, but that I will say is a potential problem for Rapp here. Because I would anticipate that later on and down the line in this trial, at some point, uh, Spacey may have photos, for example, of his apartment, and maybe that actually was a studio apartment. Maybe they'll introduce those and through him and say, "Look, this is what your apartment looked like." Like tell us about it. What's the square footage of the space? How big or how small was the space in reality? That's they've already kind of like started to line up potential dominoes for that point to be nailed for the jury, which could be problematic for him. So, but that's the end of this article. This has been absolutely wonderful. Let me get a super chat here. Joe D with a $9.99 super chat. Thanks so much. So generous of you. So kind. Cheers, Alita. Cheers. Cheers. Right back to you. I hope you are having a wonderful day. And I hope you've been having a wonderful week. And this goes for everybody in the chat. You guys, this has been wonderful. This has been wonderful. I'm so glad that we were able to go through all these different cases, kind of get caught up on all three of these cases that are happening all at the same time. It's a lot, right? It's a lot to go through. And each of them are taking their own different paces here, right? And so we've got the Spacey trial, which is probably going to wrap up by the end of this week, maybe early next week. So we're gonna try to stay on top of that, maybe a little bit more intently in just to stay up on those details, while at the same time we've got Masterson, we've got Weinstein that are kind of going at a little bit of a slower pace, right? Because they're still in jury selection, they're still in their pretrial motions, but it looks like Weinstein is going to be going into their opening statements October 24th. Masterson maybe earlier. I hope so. I'd like to get into this stuff and see what's going on in these cases a little bit sooner. But so far we've already got some interesting stuff coming out of all three of these cases. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of pieces that are sort of fitting into all of these that are somewhat uncertain, right? So thank you so much, everybody that has come out and joining the stream. All of you in the chat, all of you that are watching, I really appreciate all of you guys coming out. Love to all the super chats and super stickers and stuff. New members to Bite Club. I love it. I love to see all of that. And always super mad appreciation for the mods, for always making sure that the chat continues to flow. We've got reasoned disagreement. People can have different perspectives. People can have different impressions based on what they see, but keeping it respectful. I love it. I love to see it. And thank you so much. I know. And always like I saw Kit Kat in the chat. I see Secret McSquirrel in the chat. I know Secret McSquirrel has been dealing with some health issues, and I appreciate the heck out of everybody. And I'm so sorry if there's another mod that I missed in this chat. But I always try to take note of everybody that's in here. But this has been absolutely lovely. It's been a wonderful experience. And yeah, I'm probably going to have another recap tomorrow for the Kevin Spacey case. So keep an eye out for that. But otherwise, I'll see you guys soon.